I'm McKinney Smith. After going through a divorce, my sister passing away, experiencing narcissistic abuse, and some significant health scares, I realized through sharing my story that I wasn't alone in my suffering. Suffering, subjective distress generated by the experience of being out of balance. In a deep dive to holistically heal mind, body, and soul is where I discovered peace, clarity, and connection. It is impossible to be truly wise without some real life hardship, and we cannot develop post-traumatic wisdom without making it through, and most importantly, through it together. Social connection builds resilience, and resilience helps create post-traumatic wisdom, and that wisdom leads to hope. Hope for you and others witnessing and participating in your healing, and hope for your community. A healthy community is a healing community, and a healing community is full of hope because it has seen its own people weather, survive, and thrive. Tanya Deonarine is a mother, a wife, and a manager of people. So please welcome to the show, Tanya.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here. I'm really excited.
Thank you. I am excited to learn more about you and your story, your family story. I have a thing for getting to know phenomenal women on a deeper level. My interest in how your brain works, how you move through your adversities. Obviously, everyone can learn from it, but selfishly, I'm like, how can I learn from this magnificent woman? And I get excited when other women that have been on the show connect me with other phenomenal women. So shout out to Connie for that. So before we get into where things are presently, I love to, as an icebreaker question, get to know a little bit about how you operated when you were younger. So, society tends to shape how we think and how we feel, and sometimes limits us unintentionally. So I would love to know, who or what did you want to be as a little girl?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. But honestly, as a little girl, I was the oldest of 6 kids. So I don't know if it was nature or nurture, but for me, I knew I was going to grow up, get married, have a family, and work in some sort of industry where I felt I was helping people. So whether it be, my work or my volunteer career, that has never changed. I can't say that I specifically had, any ambition to be, like a pilot or anything, but definitely a mother. That was going to happen no matter what. So I'm very grateful that I was blessed with 2 boys and a husband, that is just as equally caring and involved in the family. So I got what I wished for. So
You manifested it.
Yeah, it did. It sure did.
I love it. I love it. So I want to actually get deeper into what you just said, especially about having a husband that basically is a mirror of your personality and how much you love and care and the desire to serve. But before I do that, I would love to know, what's your earliest childhood memory that defines who you are today?
Wow. So I think, I have quite a few memories, but I have to say that some of the more challenging times in my life, I think I've gone through a lot of things that a person, shouldn't have to go through in a lifetime. And I did that at a very early age. So I did mention that, I'm the oldest of 6 kids, but along my journey, I've lost 2 of those siblings. One when I was, it was really tough. One when I was 12, and actually just last year I lost my sister. So,
oh, wow.
That alone could make or break a person. And I chose not to let that happen to me. it's been a struggle, but I just persevered because, like I said, I at this point in my life, I have a family, and I knew before I wanted to have a family and a career, and I wasn't going to let that hold me down. I mean, I also had some other kind of trauma. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. My parents very early on divorced. It was not a great environment, but again, when you look back, you could either fall prey to all of those feelings and the blackness and darkness in your mind and just give in to all of that. But I think that, again, persevering and talking about it and telling my story and letting other people know, like, hey, I don't know how you're feeling, but I can tell you how I managed to get through this, right? So it's just a bit of everything, that kind of shaped who I am today. And, now I have my family and there's different challenges, but I think the way I look at things because of what's happened in my life, I think I'm stronger for it. And I just find a way. I find a way. And I know my husband is the same. Like, he knows everything that's happened in my life. He knows, when to kind of support me, when to leave me alone. And we just go with the flow, to be honest with you. And we do everything in our power to protect our kids, but also not let them live like a blind life. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, first off, I'm sorry that you had to experience those parts of life, the grief and the abuse. But I also commend you for the strength and vulnerability to continue to share your story with others so that they know that they're not alone. That's a huge part of what the show is about. So I am deeply grateful for women like yourself that are bold enough to speak openly about your stories so people that are listening can know that they are not alone and that there's no shame in sharing our stories and how it can actually make us stronger and build community and connection. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. I don't think anybody should feel shame. And grief, it's not a great club to be in, but it's also, if you can make your way through it and find somebody that shares a similar experience, like it's doable. You don't need to, fall in that dark hole, right?
Yeah. So I lost my sister in 2012 and I lost my grandmother who helped raise me the following summer. And I guess it's helped me not only have more empathy for other people going through their grieving process and more patience for people going through that, but also seeing how I was able to transmute my pain into purpose. Like, I would not be the version of me that I am today had I not had those experiences, right? It's completely shifted me and I'm going to say forced me to be a better person and forced me to want to be a better person when we think about legacy and we think about how we make other people feel and the lives that we're able to touch. So knowing that you had a recent loss, my condolences.
Thank you.
And you've started out sharing a lot about how your husband is very similar to you. And I would love to, I guess, speak to how you two, one, because I'm a lover of love. So as much as I've had, a bad history with it and bad experiences, I recently got engaged and I always believe in love and I love seeing other couples and hearing other stories. So I would love if you could share, I guess, a little bit about how you and your husband have been able to build the relationship and understanding that you have for each other now, because like you're saying, you're kind of mirrors of each other, but he knows when to support you, when to leave you alone, that evolution of that relationship. And, you shared before we started recording that you guys have known each other since high school. So I would love if you could share with the listeners just a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've known each other since high school. We didn't get together until later in life. We were in university, actually went to university together too. And that's kind of where things developed. I think for us, and for the listeners that are wives of firefighters, it's a struggle and it's very hard. And I think if anybody listening can understand that this is not an easy job for them, they will come home just as, whatever day they had, good or bad, that transcends into the way they are at home. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult for the children, even just schedule changes. But I think for me and him, I can move past it because I have dealt with my own trauma. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine for some of these scenarios, because the loss of my brother and my sister was tragic. And we have a connection where the fire department that he's on, those individuals he works with actually came to the calls for my siblings. So it's it's very weird. And it's just this like deep connection that it's hard to explain. But not only that, but like I said earlier, he can come home, he can be tired, he can be a bit cranky, but I can appreciate the what he's gone through, because that's not easy, so, I don't really want to get into what he's seen, but it's not easy. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think, it's very important to realize that it's not me. Like he's not taking anything out on me. That's his issue. That's him when he's ready, to talk to me, or he goes, sleeps, comes back. That's, whatever, we're good. So I'm not pushing it. I'm not forcing it. But it does get to you sometimes, right? Like you have to remember and keep telling yourself, like, to be in a good mindset. It's not you. It's the day you had. We'll be back to normal tomorrow. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's taken 20 years, but I mean, it's still a work in progress, but it's a lot of patience and a lot of understanding, and it's definitely not easy, but I think our focus is our kids. And I know a lot of couples stay together for their kids. I don't necessarily think that's healthy, but I don't think it's unhealthy to want to try and work something out, right? To keep your family together. So mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically us.
There's a lot that you said there that I kind of want to like highlight some things and unpack some things, for sure. Where you're concerned, especially. So one, like, your husband being a firefighter speaks to his character, because I feel like it definitely requires someone who is bold and brave and prioritizes being of service and helping other people to even be a firefighter. Like, to think that you're going to run into a burning building to save a complete stranger. So you're risking your life to save a life. And also to, I guess, how that affects you as a person, as a mom, with being the support system for someone with that kind of risky job. Like, obviously, we all, when our family leaves the house, you pray that they all come home safe and, all of those things. But I can only imagine the levels for yourself. So I guess even just for the listeners that are listening, maybe they don't have a partner with a high risk or high stress job like your husband, but how to cope with those thoughts. And then mm-hmm. also, you spoke about knowing that it's not your fault when he's had a hard day, and like, so ways in which you're able to cope and not internalize.
Yeah, that's good. And it's probably like a loaded question. Everybody kind of copes different ways, or, people try and do things in a way that they're, not affected. So, I mean, some days, like, you just, like, one of my favorite quotes is just to have a day, like, you don't need to have a good day, a bad day. If it's just you getting up going through, like my husband, he used to work like a little bit more shift work. Now it's just 24-hour shift, but it was difficult when the kids were younger. Now they're older, and now I'm just basically a taxi for them. But like
Mom life.
yeah,
Mama
exactly. You don't think about it though. You just wake up, you do what you need to do, and you just have a day. And if I had any advice, it would just be, remember the times, especially for new moms, right? When the baby's crying, you haven't slept. I do have images of me and my sons just at night alone. And it was the best feeling. Like it was, just something where it was just me and them. And I have it ingrained in my mind. And when I am having, a bad day, or, they're having a bad day and we're struggling together to get through that day, I remember that time and I'm like, yeah, that was a good time, right? So it is about, like you said, coping, patience, changing your thoughts. You can't be, I shouldn't say you can't be, but I think as a person, you have to try to be a positive person, have positive thoughts. And I know it might be cliche, but you have to see the positive in things. And that's how I get through my life, because of everything that's happened. Like I said, I could have fallen prey to all the addictions and all the mental health issues. I do have anxiety and depression too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it is a negative thing. It's just a coping mechanism for everything that we've been through. But the positive thoughts and, waking up every day. If you can't do everything, just do what you can and have a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you repeat that, please? Like if you can't do everything,
have a day. I think a lot of women put too much pressure on themselves. And, I think we're all strong and beautiful and we do a lot. Every single woman I have met, they just, they're just incredible creatures. And even when you think about it, you have little girls these age, or this day and age, 10 years old, getting their periods. They gotta get up.
She was 9.
Yeah, you gotta get up, go to school. Like, but there's so much pressure just to try and function and be a girl. But nobody I don't think, unless you really sit back and think about it, those are incredible beings. Like a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old getting up, going to school. Periods are not easy. Like, and I think just the fact that, we have that then later on in life, menopause, it's, we just do things, right? I think we just do things. So yeah.
You mentioned earlier, and you said, that women were magnificent creatures. And I'm just thinking, like, in the little that I know of you and in the 20 minutes that I've had to get to know you, I think you're absolutely phenomenal. Like,
Thank you.
Sometimes we're just living our day-to-day life and just being and not realizing how great we actually are.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Like, I'm thinking of the fact that on top of being a mom and a wife, you have your full-time job that you go to, you're a support system for a firefighter. And if I'm not mistaken, you're also like a momager for your son.
Yes.
And like, you've dealt with traumatic loss and grief. You've dealt with abuse. You've dealt with so many things. And yet you still manage to see a glimmer of hope. You still manage to remain positive. You still manage to have the capacity to support your family that you love so deeply. So before I get into digging deeper about even how you are a support system for your children, I would love to know, like, how do you take care of you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a lot of time that I allocate to myself. When I'm done my work, I go take a half-hour break and I watch the same show every single day. Like, that is my downtime. I have a coffee, I watch the show. my boys know, oh God, mom's watching the same show again, but they know, like, just leave me alone. Right.
Yeah.
But, and then I also have my social supports. I play volleyball twice a week. So I definitely take time to fit that in.
Yeah.
And then I prioritize, my family schedule, but they know there's certain days and times of the week, like, this is just mama time. So,
Yeah.
and they accept it. They,
Yeah.
they don't say anything.
You've
So
conditioned
yeah,
them.
yes, yes. And they know, like, this is what I need to carry on, and I will do whatever you want after.
Mhm.
So,
And I want the listeners to even like, I want to highlight that, because I think that is such an essential piece that we don't realize. We often think that as moms, especially when our kids are younger, that we shouldn't prioritize ourselves and self-care because, there's no time, we're caring for the little ones and we have to do this, that, and the third. There's always going to be a bazillion things to do. But if we don't prioritize self-care, if we don't prioritize me time, if we don't prioritize you getting that downtime that is not designated to catering to every and anyone else, not only do you lose yourself, you lose your sanity.
yeah.
So I want to just point out, like, all of the things that you do and that you have to deal with, you prioritize me time.
Yeah. And I mean, I also I don't hide my feelings. So this past year has been really tough. We're trying to, ramp up my son's career in racing. So that's how I met Connie. We're trying to really get sponsorships. We're a hardworking family. We don't have the money, but through all of this, and I'll talk to you in a bit about that, but through all of this last year, like I said, it has been extremely hard. We never thought we would lose my sister. One day she was there, the next day she wasn't. And you know the feeling, it just creeps up on you, or it hits you and you're like, oh wow, right? But I don't hide those feelings. If I need to cry, I cry. If my kids come in and say, what's wrong, mom? I say, I'm thinking about Aunt Cassandra, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I miss her too. And, they run off. But I think it's important to get it out. So, or else you're not going to be taking care of yourself. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I strongly believe in expressing how we feel and getting those emotions out and processing, because when we internalize those emotions and we suppress those feelings, that's when the depression gets a hold of us.
Yes.
And it's harder to work through from there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been there. I've had those days where, I haven't wanted to do a single thing. It was just too much. But when I started to, really think about it, that's not the life I want to lead. Right. So I really go back to that, have a day. If it's one simple thing, just try and do it, or just get through the day, just have a day.
Yeah. So. I wanted to, I guess, go back to, so you mentioned being a support system for your son, ramping up his career in racing. I know I've gone through my season of trying to be Momager for my daughter. She's the influencer. She's got over like 2 million followers on TikTok and all the things that come with that, brand deals and, blah, blah, blah. I understand the challenges of being emotionally tied to the person you're trying to manage.
Yes. I'm so glad you get it.
And when you are a mama bear and Karens, you want to fight for what is right. You want to fight for them. And sometimes you want to fight people physically.
Yes.
So I would love if you could speak more to how you are dealing with all of that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the boys have been in racing. Both my boys actually started go-karting 5 years ago competitively. And now the older one, who's 15, he's on his own journey and he's handling it very, very well. But you're right, that mama bear just comes out. And I think racing, it's a rich person's sport. But behind that, there's always that one person. And I have to say, it's usually the mom that, has the final say and input on what's happening. But it's just been so busy, and it's been a challenge because there's not a lot of diversity. More and more women are coming into the sport now, but because I have two, my husband will have to sometimes take my older son. I take my younger son. I'm in there. I'm doing the mechanicking work, and I'm really trying to help him out. But he's looking at me like, Mom, do you really know what you're doing? I'm like, of course I do. Right. And I think I do, but it's managing the emotions too, which I don't think my husband does very much. So managing the emotions, managing, the whole cycle of karting and nutrition and sleep. It is a lot. And I think anybody can do it if they want to. I feel like I just have to be flexible. I just have to go, with it. But it is challenging when a lot of the people around you are like men. You get looks, you get looked at. And you know what? I just had to turn that around in my own head. I don't care what people think about me. I know what I know, and I know my sons are going to be champions. Yeah. So you can think what you want. I'm not going to let that affect me. And I almost like it, people looking at you like, what are you doing here? Don't worry, my son's going to come first. Right? Yeah, exactly. So, but I always have to, it is hard. Like you said, like I just really want the best for them. I know my husband does too, obviously, but I feel like for women, sometimes it is a bit of a struggle to, kind of share and do what you need to do without getting that kind of pushback, right? Mm-hmm. So without saying too much, but
without you saying anything, here is what I took from what you did say. Okay. So because the boys are in racing, and it seems like it's more, as you said, a rich male dominated sport.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can sense that you have to deal with classism, racism, sexism, all the isms.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So I would love to know, actually, what advice would you give to a woman who's listening right now that is trying to be a momager or support system for someone they love that is dealing with all the isms?
I mean, I think the best advice is to just go and do it. Don't think twice about it. Make any sort of negative experience a positive, a learning. I don't know. I think I just go for it. And I can't let my kids suffer because I'm not willing to learn or push those boundaries. So I think anybody can do it. I know there's limitations to, what people want to do maybe, or what they can do sometimes, but I don't know. I just think like for me, I would never let anything hold me back if it meant my family was gonna, move forward. And I want my kids to succeed, and I will make that happen. So
I love it. Yeah. I guess part of me wants to know like how you deal as a mom, or how you feel as a mom watching your child experience these things. Like, it's one thing for us to experience it.
Yeah.
Like, I know when I was managing my daughter, and even now when I'm not, she sometimes will share screenshots of things that are said to her.
Yes.
And I for me, it's one thing for me to feel that way, but it's an icy red because I'm like, what is my child feeling? Right.
Yeah.
So I would love to know like how you feel watching your kids go through those experiences.
I do get very angry. I'm angry a lot because I mean,
Passion.
Yeah, I don't have the money to move them as quickly as I want them to. And I almost feel like the rich people in the sport, you know, they get all the glory when I know my kids are better than what, you know, than what they're showing, I guess, or what they're getting credit for. Let's put it that way. But there's other circumstances where, you know, my older son had a bit of jealousy going through school. They don't really want to talk about racing. They've been made fun of pretty badly, and some comments have been said, but they know I am in their corner. I may not be able to rectify it, but I definitely will be doing something about it. So they know that when I'm involved, okay, this is serious, and it's not something that I take lightly, especially when it comes down to some of the nasty things that people do. I don't tolerate that in my house. I don't tolerate it out there.
Bullying.
Yeah. And yeah, both the kids have been subject to that, and it's not good for the other person. Let's put it that way. So, I mean, the kids know they have to, it happens. I'm not naive to the fact that it happens. They need to have the exposure in order to know how to deal with things, right? But they also, it's super important that they know they have a support system behind them.
Yes.
And sometimes it's just not okay for a child to deal with certain things. So, yeah. So it's been quite the struggle, and I do feel bad for them sometimes, but that's where I just take my time at the end of the day and I process everything that has happened, and I figure out, how am I going to deal with this tomorrow? Because I don't want them to see me angry. I want them to see that I have done something. I have, you know, affected that change that, you know, they couldn't, right? Or maybe they didn't have the voice at that time to do. So yeah, super important. Yeah.
Like, one, you know, when you said you're angry a lot. So I laughed because, you know, sometimes we look at the label for an emotion, and because of what we've been conditioned to believe,
Yes.
you know, it's how we view it. But anger is you really saying, like, what am I trying to protect or defend?
Yes.
And if you're angry because you're trying to protect or defend your kids, don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, that's
Be
amazing.
angry, girl.
You are right. Yeah, I love that. I really do love that.
and also, I was going to say something else, and now I can't remember. So I know, as a child who didn't feel like I had the support system I needed growing up, how that affected me, which is why I strongly, my kids' biggest champion, like, if someone is doing something to them, you better believe I know. I am aware. Okay. And it's very hard for me, even although my kids are now all over 18, it's very hard for me to not get involved, but I will try to ask their permission first.
Yes, I know.
So to the moms listening,
yeah.
I guess in terms of, like, because your boys are younger, they're both still in high school, correct?
15 and 13. So both, one secondary, one elementary.
Yeah. So that's a very tender age.
Yeah.
And bullying happens a lot with boys at that age. And yeah, it's a definite challenge. I mean, I'm just thinking of the women that are listening, and maybe they're dealing with bullying. Like, what's one piece of advice that you would give?
Yeah. So I mean, the way I dealt with it was kind of to not stop talking to my kids about it, because boys, I can't say anything because I don't have girls, but I know boys, they don't always want to talk about it.
Right.
So don't give up. Keep after them, keep after them. Make sure they're safe. Make sure if they have a cell phone, you're looking at the cell phone, but tell them what you're doing. If bullying is happening in school, let them know you're there to support them. You're going to do it calmly. You're going to talk to the teacher first. You're going to talk to the principal. And then if nothing gets done, then, you might have to take it a step higher. But it is important to, I think, keep your children involved to a certain extent and let them know, like, they need to share their experiences, just as I need to get this out and deal with the situation without, getting angry or having too much emotion, which is weird to say, but I, at the end of the day, I am fiercely protective of them. And I think people know that if they're going to call their mom, then there's a serious conversation. But I don't shy away from the fact that you have to take responsibility for your own actions too. If, my kids are participating in something that is not necessarily, I don't want to say right or nice, but, not something that they should be doing. Let's just put it this way. They're going to hear it from me too. Like, I'm not one to shy away from those conversations with them or the school. So for instance,
you're just holding everybody accountable.
100%. Yeah. Like, I'm not doing, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Like, accountability is where it's at.
Yes,
like that has been my word for the last, 2-3 years, like accountability.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
We need to be accountable for ourselves. We need to be accountable for our children, for, I read somewhere where it's like, it's hard mentally, or I guess subconsciously, for someone to accept accountability when they're wrong. It's almost like the fear of death. Like it's their idea of what it could do to them, or, it's so big that accepting accountability isn't easy. So I think it's always important for us to hold each other accountable. Mm-hmm. And there was something else I was going to say. I think when you were talking about, when you try not to show too much emotion, and I was just thinking, like, our feelings are data, right? Like, emotions are energy in motion. So I've learned that whatever the emotion is, especially with my kids, try to understand where that emotion is coming from. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we are quick to get upset with someone for how they're expressing their emotions, but what is the root of that, right? Where is that coming from? Is that coming from, because they are hurt about something, they're whatever. But I think that I don't know how old you are, but I'm in my mid-40s. So I know our generation was like, we weren't given permission to feel all the feels all the time. You know what I mean? We weren't given the language to even express how we feel. And I think that's why our generation is now trying to unlearn and relearn and do better with our kids. So it's important that, like, I've learned now in my later years to be very open about my emotions with my kids. Like, for probably my first 30 odd years, my kids never saw me cry. So they thought I was Superwoman. Yeah. But they always saw, like, my daughters always saw their dad cry. Yeah. So they always felt sorry for dad. And mom's Superwoman. She's cold. She has no feelings. And when they realized in the last few years, like, mom cries every day. I am such an empath. I'm so emotional. I cry for commercials. If something is happening, I will go in the bathroom and cry. But I let them know I cry every day. I have feelings. I'm a human being. I'm not a machine.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point too, because if my husband and I are having a disagreement and, the kids see, like, I don't want them to think like it's the end of the world, they fight. So, like, I'm allowed to have disagreements too, but this is how I resolve those disagreements, right? And yeah, you brought up a good point about not knowing what the other person is particularly feeling or going through that day. And because of some of the experiences I have had, it's kind of hard not to get your back up, but at the same time, I'm not going to, assume things, or, like, if somebody needs a minute, they let them have their minute, So yeah, I really like that too.
I think it was probably through my own kids where I had to understand feelings even deeper, aside from how I feel. Because it's like, you can have the quietest child and all of a sudden they have this aggressive outburst and you're like, oh, what just happened? Where did that come from? Right. So me learning to understand emotions and the data and all that information is like, aggression is like, what am I trying to survive? Your anger is, what am I trying to protect or defend? Like, understanding the not just the emotion, but behind the emotion so that we can actually have some compassion and understanding for the person. But yeah, I digress.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's a struggle, but I mean, I can tell when my boys have been pushed to the limit, whether they're too tired or overstimulated. You just have to, like I said, be flexible, patient, and go with the flow, and you will get through it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we go to the final segment of the show,
Sure.
I would love if you could tell the listeners where they could stay connected with you, where they can learn more from you, about your wonderful family that is out here doing amazing things.
Yeah, so I'd really like people to check out my family website. It's deoracing.com. So DEO racing.com. My older son is also, like I said, on his own personal journey in racing. His website is mayordeonarine.com. So you could check us out, check out our natural progression through this crazy life, and yeah, hopefully one day, success. So thank you.
There will be success, and there is right now, right?
Yeah. I'm pretty lucky, and I keep telling myself that. So
I think as a society, because we've been conditioned to believe that success looks a certain way, we don't celebrate and honor the success that we have now, where it's like, I grew up thinking success is like rich people.
Yeah.
And getting older and being around those environments and, earning my own income and all these things, and realizing that a lot of the quote unquote successful people, they're not rich in other areas of their life. Right.
Exactly.
And when I first became a single mom, when I was going through the divorce, realizing for me in that season, success was being able to pay my bills, to keep a roof over the kids' heads, and to keep food in their mouths. So it's like my definition of success changes depending on the season of life that I'm in.
Yeah.
So I say all of that to say there is plenty of success that you guys have attained, and there's plenty more to come. But I will definitely have all of those links in the detailed section so they can just click and connect with you directly. And for the final segment, it's kind of like a rapid fire.
Okay.
And you can share the first thing that comes to mind, whether that be one word or one sentence, and you let me know when you're ready to go.
Okay, let's do this.
Okay, if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say and why?
Have a day. I think that is like my thing. Now it gets me through life. Just have a day.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about, making it the best day of your life. You don't have to, if you failed that day at something, that's okay too. Just have a day.
Love it. Okay.
Yeah.
When was the last time you cried?
Cried probably yesterday. Yeah, yesterday, I would have to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
When was the last time you apologized to someone?
Don't know if that was today. I would say fairly recently. I have no shame in apologizing. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay. If you could describe yourself in one word, what would that be?
Wow. These are like tough questions. It's hard to like internalize this. If I had to describe myself, I would say thankful.
Okay. What's one thing you forgive yourself for?
I forgive myself for, and I know perfection is not attainable, but I forgive myself for not always being present every day. But it is very hard to show up every day and be what others want you to be or what they need you to be. So,
Expectation.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And last but not least, how has motherhood changed you?
It's changed me because it's the significance of two, specifically speaking about myself, my two boys depending on me and needing me, and me, being responsible for them, and knowing that there's loss in life, you know. I think motherhood is, if you're lucky enough to have kids, I think it's the greatest experience. It's so unbelievably hard to explain. And I don't know. It's definitely special.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for taking the time to share your story with us today, for leaving us with your gems and your strength and your resilience. I truly, truly appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you too. You're an inspiration. Like I said, every woman I meet is just so special and beautiful and strong. And I truly appreciate that in you.
Like attracts like, right?
Right.
So if you see it in us, it's because it's in you.
Thank you.
To all of you healers out there, until next time, make sure you subscribe. Don't forget to rate the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcast. And we want to thank each and every one of you that continues to listen each week to help the show rank globally in the top 1.5% of most popular podcasts out there. I want to challenge you to share Tanya's story with 3 women that would receive value from hearing her story and her gems. And feel free to screenshot this week's episode, and you can tag us with your aha moments. You can tag Tanya at TBRUN7. You can tag myself at The Real Bikini Smith. A healthy community is a healing community, and a healing community is full of hope because it has seen its own people weather, survive, and thrive. So let's continue to heal her.